did they actually create this, bioweapon that could cause a fast-acting cancer that would kill you in a matter of months?
Wow.
Which glioblastomas are aggressive and they kill you usually within a few months to a year. Um, and so it makes me wonder. It
Right.
really makes me
Is that what
wonder.
Cruz is saying? Was he saying that to you, Cruz, when you talked to him?
I had asked him if he had heard about the Biden thing. It was the right when I had found out, and I had seen the episode, and I thought we followed each other on X, and I just messaged him. I was like, "Have you spoken to?" And I hadn't seen his whole episode yet, so I didn't know it was in the episode. But I was like, "Have you talked to Dr. Jewsbury Baker? She's a good friend of mine, and I think you guys would blow this out of court because he knew a lot about it." And I was like, "She knows all the missing details." And he's like, "No, I actually just saw her a couple months ago," and I was like, "Oh." Okay, that makes
Wow.
more sense now. So that verified for me who he was because I know her and I've heard her tell that story. She has a book. She has a book. It's never changed. She's very consistent. And it all adds up. And there's other evidence that it survived. A special cancer virus program is what it used to be called. And you can Google that and
Yeah.
find that program.
So
And Dr. Oshner.
you think they went after Bo because of what he was doing? And by they, I mean Joe. Like what are you theorizing?
Well, Joe has always maintained, and so has a lot of other politicians that spoke in eulogies for his funeral, that Bo's cancer was caused by what they blame on oil fields or burning chemicals in either Kosovo or Iraq when he was stationed in the Middle East in
Right.
late 2008, 2009. Um, there's a lot of cases of chemical exposure incidents that lead to all sorts of diseases. And that started really, I think, in the Gulf War and Vietnam. Actually, Vietnam probably was stronger with that, with the Agent Orange. Yeah, even Nina
Yeah.
Jankowicz, the woman who was going to be the head of the misinformation at DHS, her father died that way from
Mm.
Agent Orange exposure. Um, just a weird fact, I know, but so it does happen quite frequently amongst people who serve in overseas. They're
Yeah.
exposed to not only a lot of chemicals and bioweapons, but they're also exposed to the environmental factors of wherever it is they're going.
Yep.
And so that's why they're given a lot of vaccines, and there's a chemical soup out
Yep.
there
Yep.
essentially. So it's understandable, and there has been high rates of of different types of cancers. I live between military bases right now, and the one to the south of me has got massive lawsuits for PFAs, PFOAs, cancers, and all sorts of things that have been poisoning the entire base for like 40 years.
Right.
And it's caused birth defects. And so I know these things happen, but I've heard, firsthand accounts. I was a military wife myself for over 6 years. So I've talked to a lot of these guys that come back from overseas, and God bless them for what they do. But, a lot of the times they come back with this real sad feeling that America's involved in hurting them more than helping them.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard many accounts from Iraq vets that have come back and said, we go into these burning chemical facilities and we have to try to put out these massive fires. And they've got something called like the the chemical nuclear biological department of the army, right? They
Right.
send in the hazmat suit guys. But often the people who find these stores of these chemicals at first are going to be just live soldiers on the ground, and then they'll call in those people. But by that time, they're already exposed.
Right.
But I've heard many accounts firsthand where they're like, but we're in there, but the crates of these chemicals all say manufactured in the United States of America.
Oh wow.
And so a lot of them get very upset about that. They feel very betrayed, especially the ones that get very sick. And Gulf War syndrome and things like that were also heavily tied to our own chemicals that were found in the Middle East that we had sold to them indiscriminately, and then they were used against us in a way because of the exposure, and lots of people died. And there was never weapons of mass destruction, but there was definitely weapons of American enterprise left
Yeah.
around that was dangerous. And so I'm wondering, with DuPont Chemical being probably not very happy with Beau
Mm.
Biden, being chemical magnates, I wouldn't put it past, and that's what I wanted to ask Dr. Cruz about, if he knew
Wow.
anything about DuPont and their ties to the special virus cancer program. Because if there's any at all, even if they had like a former scientist who later became in that program or something like that, I would be extremely interested to see that kind of story, because um, the idea that they are killing people with a weaponized cancer, I don't think it's out the realm of possibility
No.
if the background is covering up child rape and
Right.
stuff like that.
Especially when
I don't think that's
you're a giant empire,
yeah.
that runs America. I think anything's possible, especially for those who think this might sound crazy, when they think about and talk about these things publicly, it's like lately I've been talking about weather manipulation. Well, I've talked about it a lot, but only because it's rooted in things that they produce publicly, right?
Yeah.
And you think like they haven't showed us everything clearly. Just because they're saying it publicly doesn't mean they haven't been doing it privately for much longer. So anything's possible. We also know about heart attack guns that they had back in the 70s.
1975.
Right.
Yeah,
So,
Senator Church committee hearing.
yep.
And that year, three following, sorry,
No,
but I
go.
love this fact. I did a
Yeah.
whole thread on this. 3 years after that, uh, the Senator Church committee hearings, there was the highest incidence of politicians dying of heart attacks in office. I think the tops one year was like 7 politicians, either in the Senate or House Representatives, died from heart
Wow.
attacks. Some of them as young as like 46,
Wow.
43. Yeah, it was very bizarre.
It's weird.
And which made me think a lot. And politicians die cancers, heart attacks, and plane crashes. Like
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's
that's a
true.
big one.
It's
Hmm.
very weird. And things do happen naturally. I'm not saying they don't, but I also know that these people plan very weird, very personalized, nefarious deaths for people who get in their way. And it's nothing new.
It's a lot of money. People have to understand that these are people addicted to power,
Yeah.
and that's something that I understood instantly when I started looking into the conspiracy of elites being pedophiles and having these child trafficking rings. And
Mm-hmm.
it sounds crazy, but I mean, people are catching on now that it's more reality
Mm-hmm.
than we all were led to believe. Now with
Yep.
the Diddy case, of course, going on right now, that's a huge push towards the belief that this does happen in
Oh,
the
yeah.
highest echelons. Although statistically, yes, most kids that are raped, it's by somebody they knew and
Mm-hmm.
somebody they likely trusted, or else they wouldn't have let themselves alone with the person.
Right.
So it's usually a family member, family friend, coach, teacher, something along those lines. However, people forget the fact that politicians, elites, they build their entire empires on influence and power. And when you look at the psychology behind what rape is about it's for the predator, it's not even truly about sex.
Right.
It's not about that. It's really a power struggle.
Yeah.
It's a way they can push power. It's the ultimate power when it's against a child because they are so
Mm.
defenseless, and it leaves the person doing it feeling ultimately powerful. And so I don't see why people couldn't grasp the fact that those two things are hand in hand.
Right.
People addicted to power and influence, and being the best of the best and having their way whenever they want, which is elite mantra.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's the same mantra that pedophiles have,
Right. Yep.
is I get to do what I want because I'm better and bigger than
They're
you, and
above the
you're going to
law.
do what I say. Yeah.
They say they make the law, but they're above the law. Like, think about what happened during COVID lockdowns. All these people telling us to stay in our homes or outside getting their hair done, going to restaurants and, having
Yeah.
parties. Or in New York, my old home state, having orgies, while everyone's being told to lock down. It's insane. These people are depraved. More people need to know about it. Did we miss anything with Beau Biden that you think you want to share if we didn't touch on that?
Yeah, the Guatemala thing, it's not really with Bo, but it's something I'm currently looking into, and it's getting more and more interesting by the second. But when Joe was VP, and this is what makes me a little suspicious of Joe too. Like, if you are willing to like lie about your son, not talk about his greatest achievements, and I'll be at the same time the president that has allowed the largest child trafficking operation in our history to continue,
Yeah.
um, at horrific lengths. When you look at the fact Jill, which is Bo's stepmom, she's at the head of this company that's now under serious investigation for child trafficking and child abuse.